There's a building in Basel, Switzerland, an 18-story tower near the train station. From the outside, it looks like any other office building. Glass and steel, modern, unremarkable. But this building has its own police force, its own fire department, its own jurisdiction, separate from Swiss law. The Swiss government cannot enter this building without permission. Swiss police cannot arrest anyone inside. Swiss courts have no authority over what happens within these walls. This building is sovereign territory, not of Switzerland, not of any nation. It belongs to a bank, not just any bank, the bank that central banks answer to, the institution where the people who control your country's money supply meet in secret every 2 months to coordinate global monetary policy. Inside this building, in private meetings with no minutes and no public record, central bankers from 63 countries make decisions that affect interest rates, inflation, currency values, and the economic fate of billions of people. You've never heard of it. Most elected officials don't understand what it does. But it's arguably the most powerful financial institution on earth. It's called the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS. And tonight, we're going inside the tower. We're going to understand what this institution is, how it got its power, why it operates above the law, and why the people who control your money answer to a bank in Basel that you can't vote for, can't audit, and can't touch. This is Hours Deep. Get comfortable. We're following the money to the top of the pyramid, the foundation. What the BIS actually is, the basics. The Bank for International Settlements is the world's oldest international financial organization, founded in 1930, headquartered in Basel, Switzerland. It is, in the simplest terms, the central bank for central banks. When the Federal Reserve U.S., European Central Bank, EU, Bank of England, UK, Bank of Japan, or any of the 63 member central banks need to coordinate policy, settle international transactions, or discuss monetary strategy, they do it through the BIS. The BIS doesn't deal with regular people. You can't open an account there. You can't deposit money. You can't get a loan. It only deals with central banks and international financial institutions. What it does? 1. Facilitates cooperation between central banks, provides a forum for discussion and coordination. 2. Acts as a bank for central banks, holds their reserves, manages their investments. 3. Sets global banking standards, the Basel Accords, regulations that every bank in the world must follow. 4. Conducts monetary and financial research, publishes reports that influence policy. 5. Hosts secret meetings. Every 2 months, central bank governors meet in Basel, the structure. The BIS is not owned by any government. It's owned by its member central banks. But here's the twist. It operates as a for-profit corporation. Shareholders: 63 central banks, including the Fed, ECB, Bank of England, Bank of Japan, etc. Board of Directors: governors of major central banks, the heads of the Fed, ECB, etc. The current general manager, CEO, Agustin Carstens, former governor of Mexico's central bank. Employees: about 600 people from 60-plus countries. Annual profit: hundreds of millions of dollars, distributed to member central banks as dividends. The power. Here's what makes the BIS unique and terrifying. Diplomatic immunity. The BIS and its employees are immune from prosecution under Swiss law. They cannot be arrested, sued, or taxed by Switzerland or any country. Sovereign territory. The BIS headquarters in Basel is extraterritorial. Swiss police cannot enter without permission. It's like an embassy, but for a bank. No oversight. The BIS is not accountable to any government, parliament, or international body. It operates in secret. Legal immunity. The BIS Charter, its founding document, grants it immunity from taxation, regulation, judicial process, search and seizure, expropriation. Why? The official reason: central banks need a neutral space to discuss monetary policy without political interference. The real reason: the most powerful bankers in the world wanted a place where they could meet, plan, and coordinate without anyone watching. The headquarters. The BIS Tower in Basel is a statement of power designed by architect Mario Botta. Opened in 1977, extended in 2019, 18 stories above ground, 3 stories below ground. The building contains private offices for central bank governors, secure conference rooms, a library with restricted access, high-tech communication systems, an underground vault, rumored to hold gold reserves, though the BIS denies this. The police force. The BIS has its own private security and police force. These officers have authority within the BIS territory. They are not Swiss police. They answer only to the BIS. If a crime occurs inside the BIS building, Swiss police cannot investigate without permission from the BIS management. The fire department. The BIS also has its own fire brigade, not outsourced to the city of Basel. Internal. This level of independence is unprecedented for a financial institution. The meetings. Every 2 months, central bank governors from around the world fly to Basel for a weekend meeting. What happens? Friday evening, private dinner. No staff, no minutes. Saturday, closed-door meetings. No public record. Sunday morning, more meetings, then departure. Who attends? Jerome Powell, Federal Reserve, USA. Christine Lagarde, European Central Bank. Andrew Bailey, Bank of England. Kazuo Ueda, Bank of Japan. Central bank governors from China, Canada, Australia, Brazil, India, etc. These are the people who control global interest rates, money supply, and credit availability. What they discuss? Officially, monetary policy coordination and financial stability. Unofficially, who knows? There are no minutes, no press releases, no transparency. After the 2008 financial crisis, journalists asked the BIS for records of what was discussed in the years leading up to the collapse. The BIS refused. Why? Because the meetings are confidential. Who makes them confidential? The BIS itself. Who can challenge that decision? No one. The BIS is above the law. The history, how the BIS got its power, the origin, 1930. The BIS was created in 1930 to handle German reparations from World War I. After World War I, Germany owed massive war reparations to France, Britain, and other Allied powers. The payments were managed through an international system, and the BIS was established to facilitate these transfers. The idea, a neutral bank, controlled by central bankers, not politicians, would manage the payments and help stabilize the global financial system. The founding members, central banks of Germany, Belgium, France, Britain, Italy, Japan, a consortium of American banks. The Federal Reserve didn't officially join until later. From the beginning, the BIS was designed to be independent of governments. The Young Plan. The BIS was created as part of the Young Plan, named after American banker Owen D. Young, which restructured Germany's reparations. The plan included a provision. The BIS would be immune from government interference. This immunity was written into Swiss law and international treaties. Why? The official reason: to ensure the BIS could operate neutrally without political pressure. The real reason: bankers wanted a space where they controlled the rules. The Nazi gold scandal, 1939 to 1945. Here's where it gets dark. During World War II, the BIS continued operating. Even though member countries were at war with each other, the BIS had members from both the Allied powers, Britain, France, USA, and the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, Japan. The problem? Nazi Germany was looting gold from occupied countries and from Holocaust victims. This gold needed to be laundered, converted into currency that could be used to buy supplies for the war effort. The BIS accepted this gold. How it worked? Germany would deposit looted gold at the BIS. The BIS would credit Germany's account. Germany would use those credits to buy supplies from neutral countries: Switzerland, Sweden, Spain, Turkey. The BIS acted as a clearinghouse for Nazi transactions. The scale: between 1939 and 1945, the BIS handled hundreds of millions of dollars in gold transactions for Nazi Germany. Some of this gold was taken from the national banks of occupied countries: Belgium, Netherlands, Czechoslovakia. Some was taken from Holocaust victims: melted down wedding rings, dental fillings, jewelry stolen from concentration camps. The defense: after the war, the BIS claimed it didn't know the gold was looted, but internal documents, released decades later, show that BIS officials were aware of the source. Why did they continue? Because the BIS saw itself as above politics. Its job was to facilitate international finance, regardless of who was at war with whom. The American president, Thomas McKittrick, was an American banker who served as president of the BIS during World War II, 1940 to 1946. He maintained relationships with both Allied and Axis central bankers. In 1943, while the U.S. was at war with Germany, McKittrick traveled to Basel for BIS meetings. He met with Emil Pohl, vice president of the Reichsbank, Nazi Germany's central bank. Pohl was later convicted at Nuremberg for war crimes related to the looting of gold. McKittrick was never prosecuted. The post-war survival. After World War II, there were calls to dissolve the BIS. At the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, where the IMF and World Bank were created, the U.S. and Britain proposed shutting down the BIS due to its collaboration with the Nazis. But the BIS survived. Why? Because central bankers wanted to keep it. The BIS was a useful institution. It provided a neutral forum for central banks to coordinate. Shutting it down would mean losing that infrastructure, so the BIS continued, quietly, out of the public eye, with almost no one paying attention. The Basel Accords, 1974 to present. In 1974, a bank called Herstatt Bank in Germany collapsed due to foreign exchange losses. The collapse created a crisis. How do you regulate banks that operate across borders? Central banks realized they needed international standards. Enter the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, created by the BIS. This committee, made up of central bankers and regulators, meets in Basel at the BIS to set global banking rules. Basel I, 1988, set minimum capital requirements for banks. Banks had to hold a certain amount of capital relative to their risk-weighted assets. This became the global standard. Every country adopted it. Basel II, 2004. More sophisticated risk assessment. Banks could use their own models to calculate risk. This was in effect during the 2008 financial crisis. It failed spectacularly. Basel III, 2010 to present. Stricter capital requirements, more regulation, created in response to the 2008 crisis. Why this matters? The Basel Accords are not laws. No government passed them. They are standards created by unelected central bankers meeting in Basel. But every bank in the world must follow them. Why? Because if a country refuses to adopt Basel standards, international markets punish them. Investors flee. Credit dries up. The country is isolated. So in practice, the Basel Accords are more powerful than national laws. And they're written by central bankers meeting in secret at the BIS. The 2008 financial crisis. In the years leading up to 2008, central bankers met regularly at the BIS. Did they see the crisis coming? Yes. BIS research papers from 2003 to 2007 warned about excessive risk-taking by banks housing bubbles in the U.S. and Europe, dangerous levels of leverage, systemic instability. BIS economist William White wrote multiple reports warning that a major crisis was coming. So, what did the central bankers do? Nothing. Why? Because raising interest rates or tightening regulation would have been politically unpopular. It would have slowed economic growth. Politicians and voters would have been furious. So the central bankers, meeting in Basel, reading the warnings, did nothing. And in 2008, the global financial system collapsed. The aftermath. After the crisis, journalists wanted to know, what did the BIS discuss in the years before the crash? The BIS refused to release meeting minutes. Why? Confidentiality. Who holds them accountable? No one. The power. Who really controls the BIS? The governance structure. The BIS is technically owned by its member central banks. But not all members are equal. Shareholding, the largest shareholders, and thus the most powerful, Federal Reserve, USA, European Central Bank, Bank of England, UK, Bank of Japan, Deutsche Bundesbank, Germany, Banque de France. These central banks control the BIS Board of Directors. The board. The BIS is governed by a board of directors composed of central bank governors. Current members include Jerome Powell, Federal Reserve, Christine Lagarde, ECB, Andrew Bailey, Bank of England, Kazuo Ueda, Bank of Japan, other central bank governors from major economies. This is the most powerful financial committee in the world. They meet 6 times a year. They decide .BIS policies, global banking standards, research priorities. Who gets invited to Basel meetings? The general manager. The CEO of the BIS is called the general manager. Current, Agustin Carstens, appointed 2017. Former governor of Mexico's central bank. Influential in international finance circles, he oversees the BIS staff and represents the institution publicly. But the real power lies with the board, the central bank governors, the revolving door. Here's how the system works. You start as an economist at a central bank, Fed, ECB, etc. You rise through the ranks. You work at the BIS for a few years, building relationships with other central bankers. You return to your home central bank with enhanced status. Eventually, you become a central bank governor. Now, you're on the BIS board. You control global monetary policy. Example, Mario Draghi worked at the World Bank, then Italian Treasury, then Goldman Sachs, then Bank of Italy, then became president of the European Central Bank, 2011 to 2019. During his tenure at the ECB, he was on the BIS board. He made decisions affecting trillions of euros. Who elected him? No one. He was appointed. Who does he answer to? Other central bankers. This is the pattern, a small self-selecting group of technocrats who rotate through the same institutions. The Central Bankers Club. The BIS hosts exclusive gatherings. The Economic Consultative Committee, central bank governors from the G10 countries, US, Germany, Japan, UK, France, etc., meet every 2 months in Basel. This is the inner circle. The Global Economy Meeting. A broader group, governors from all 63 member central banks, meet every 2 months. The bi-monthly dinners, these are informal, no staff, no minutes. Central bankers eat, drink, and talk. What do they discuss? No one knows. Why the secrecy? The official reason: central bankers need to speak freely without political pressure. The real reason: they don't want accountability. The financial secrecy. The BIS manages billions of dollars for central banks. It invests their reserves, facilitates currency swaps, and provides banking services. How much money? As of 2023, the BIS holds approximately $500 billion in deposits from central banks. It also facilitates trillions in currency transactions annually. Where does the money go? The BIS doesn't have to disclose its investments in detail. It publishes an annual report, but the details are vague. Unlike a normal bank, the BIS isn't subject to national banking regulations or audits by outside authorities. Who audits the BIS? The BIS audits itself. It has internal auditors. External audits are conducted by a private firm chosen by the BIS. There is no independent oversight by any government or international body. The immunity problem. Let's be clear about what the BIS's immunity means. If a BIS employee commits a crime in Basel, Swiss police cannot arrest them. If the BIS violates Swiss law, Swiss courts cannot prosecute. If a journalist wants BIS documents, the BIS can refuse, and no court can compel them. This is not theoretical. It's codified in the BIS Charter and Swiss law. The Headquarters Agreement. In 1987, Switzerland and the BIS signed the Headquarters Agreement, which grants the BIS inviolability of premises. Police cannot enter. Immunity from legal process. Exemption from taxes. Exemption from financial controls. Freedom to hold any currency in gold. Uncensored communications. This makes the BIS more powerful than many sovereign nations. The reality. Why this matters. The democratic deficit. Here's the fundamental problem. Central banks control the most important economic lever in any country, the money supply. They set interest rates. They decide how much money is in circulation. They control inflation. These decisions affect whether you can afford a house, mortgage rates, whether businesses hire or fire, credit availability, whether your savings grow or shrink, inflation, whether your country goes into recession or grows. These are arguably the most important economic decisions a government makes. And yet, they're made by unelected central bankers who coordinate policy at the BIS in Basel. You didn't vote for Jerome Powell. You didn't vote for Christine Lagarde. But they have more impact on your economic life than most elected politicians. The accountability gap. When a democratically elected government makes a bad decision, voters can replace them. When the BIS makes a bad decision, there is no recourse. Example, 2008 financial crisis. The BIS knew a crisis was coming. They published warnings. Central bankers read the warnings. They did nothing. The crisis happened. Millions lost their homes, jobs, savings. Were any central bankers fired? No. Were any prosecuted? No. Did the BIS change its structure to increase transparency? Number. In fact, after the crisis, the BIS became more powerful because it was put in charge of writing the new global banking rules, Basel III. The institution that failed to prevent the crisis was given more authority. The secrecy problem. Why do central bankers meet in secret? The official reason: they need to discuss monetary policy without market speculation or political pressure. There's some logic to this. If the Fed announced, "We're thinking about raising rates," markets would react before the decision is finalized, but the secrecy goes too far. After decisions are made, there should be transparency. What was discussed? What were the alternatives? What data informed the decision? But the BIS publishes almost nothing. We don't know what central bankers discuss in Basel. We don't know what advice the BIS gives to central banks. We don't know how decisions are made. This is not transparency. This is a black box controlling trillions of dollars and billions of lives. The inequality engine. Here's the ugly truth about the BIS and central banking. Central bank policies benefit the wealthy. When central banks lower interest rates, as they did after 2008, it makes borrowing cheap. Who benefits? People who own assets, stocks, real estate, bonds, because cheap credit drives up asset prices. Corporations that can borrow cheaply, banks that profit from lending. Who loses? People who depend on savings. Interest rates on savings accounts drop to near zero. People who don't own assets. They can't benefit from rising stock/real estate prices. Workers, because low rates can lead to inflation eroding wages. The result? After 2008, central banks flooded the system with cheap money, stock market soared, real estate boomed, but wages stagnated, inequality grew. The BIS coordinated this policy globally, and no one voted for it. What can be done? Here's the problem. Reforming the BIS is nearly impossible. Why? Because the only people with the power to reform it are the central bankers who benefit from the current system. What would real reform look like? 1. End diplomatic immunity. The BIS should be subject to Swiss law like any other institution. 2. Publish meeting minutes. Central bankers can discuss policy privately, but after decisions are made, the public should know what was said. 3. Democratic oversight. The BIS should report to an international body with elected representatives, perhaps a reformed UN or a new institution. 4. Audit requirements. Independent auditors, not chosen by the BIS, should examine the BIS's finances. 5. Limit its power. The Basel Accords should be negotiated in public forums, not behind closed doors. But none of this will happen. Why? Because the central bankers who control the BIS also control the money. And as long as they control the money, they control the system. The bigger picture. The BIS is the ultimate example of technocracy over democracy. The idea behind technocracy: complex decisions should be made by experts, not politicians or voters. Central bankers argue monetary policy is too complicated for ordinary people. We need PhDs in economics making these decisions, not populist politicians. There's some truth to this. Monetary policy is complex. But here's the counterargument. If the decisions affect everyone, everyone deserves a say. If central bankers can make mistakes, and they do, see 2008, they should be accountable. The BIS represents the purest form of unaccountable power, a group of unelected officials meeting in secret, immune from prosecution, controlling the global financial system. and most people don't even know it exists. So that's the Bank for International Settlements, a tower in Basel, its own police, its own laws, immune from oversight. The central bank governors of the world, the people who control your country's money, fly to Basel every 2 months, meet in secret, and coordinate policy. No minutes, no votes, no transparency. They set the rules that every bank must follow. They decide the standards that shape global finance. They manage trillions in reserves, and when they fail, as they did in 2008, they face no consequences. Instead, they're given more power. You didn't elect them. You can't fire them. You can't audit them. The next time you hear about interest rates, inflation, or monetary policy, remember, those decisions aren't made in Washington, London, or Brussels. They're made in a tower in Basel by people you'll never meet, following rules they write themselves, answerable to no one. This has been Hours Deep. Thanks for following the money to the top with me tonight. If you want us to investigate other hidden power structures, the World Bank, the IMF, BlackRock, the Federal Reserve itself, let me know. We've got more towers to climb. Stay skeptical and follow the money.